Welcoming you to the series of Google Sheet query tutorial part 2. Hope you have seen my previous query tutorial basics video which contains elaborative basic operations of query functions, and in this part you are going to be mastered in query function group by option. Okay, keep watching. Consider subscribing to get more Excel related tricks and tips to improve your Excel knowledge. And before getting into that example, you must know why to use the group by option in query. Group by is used to grouping the data based on that selected ranges. Simply we call it as grouping plus operating. That means grouping the data and operating that remaining values based on that grouping of elements. Group by option will get involved majorly in mathematical based operations such as count, average, min and max, and etc. If you don't use any one of the aggregate functions, then it is not required to use group by options. Let's check it out how to use the group by in real-time scenarios. That will make it more interesting. So this is the formula for defining query function, and as you know that it is accepting three parameters. That first I need to define the ranges of the query, and second I need to define the simple query string. Here I'm just selecting that A column as a query string, and if I hit enter, you can see the data which is available in that A column will be written here. Okay, so if I trying to query one more column, you can see it here. Okay, so this is the normal way of using query function. Okay, so in this function we are going to add the group by option. So this you need to do after typing the space, after that B column, and if I hit space, I need to add that group by. So it is a predefined keyword provided in the Google query language. Okay, here I need to define the which column I need to put the group by function. So in this I am going to add the group by against the A column. Okay, so this time just removing the B column. If I hit enter, it is throwing error because it is saying group by cannot be added if it is not a aggregate function. Here I have not specified any aggregate function. As I told earlier, the group by function has to be done only against that aggregate functions. What are the aggregate functions? Like sum is an aggregate function, like base, min and max, on average, like that we are having many aggregate functions. So if I add that sum, I'm just taking one of the aggregate functions sum, and if I add the sum of the A column and adding the group by A, and if I hit enter, you can see the sum is happening against the column. And if I am grouping it by B, you can see the difference here. You're having the result as a 8 result, and if I change the group by B, you can see only 7 finding. Okay, so the reason is here the grouping is happening by the column B. Okay, it's not happening the column A. If I do the grouping by column A, so there is no duplicate values, but whereas in column B we are having one duplicate findings, Stephen. Okay, here the system is considering that 5th and 6th rows, these two rows it is considering as a unique. It's grouping that as a Stephen as a single group, and counting that, summing the serial number and adding it here. You can see that 3. Okay, here 3 number got duplicated. The reason is that 3 is added from 1 and plus 2. Okay, to elaborate that, let me add that B column as well. You can see it here. B against the Stephen, we are having that sum is a 3. So the reason is the 2 and 1 got counted, that got summed. Okay, so this is the main purpose of using group by function. Okay, so this we cannot do it without adding group by in any sum or any aggregate functions. And let me show you with another example by using that numbers value. If I want to do that grouping by number, how do I do that? Same, I'm just editing the same formula and changing the group by from B to C. C is the amount, and if I hit enter, the error will be available. The reason is I have not added the B column in the grouping function. You should have a question something like, why should I add the B column in the grouping function? Because I just want to add the C column alone in the grouping. Then why should I add the B column in the grouping? Because you are selecting that B column in the selected query. So if you are selecting any column in the selected column should be grouped, or it should be an aggregate function. Okay, here I have selected two columns. That first one is an aggregate function, while the second column is a B column. So that should be either summed or grouped. Okay, here I just want to select only that B column. I don't want to do any aggregate function. Then that column should be grouped. Okay, I'm just adding that group by C and B. So system will consider the grouping will happen in both columns. The duplicate should be available. Duplicate should be in both columns. Then only the system will consider the two rows as a single values. Okay, here you can see that same six values, and if you want to differentiate that, let me change the values. Here you can see again 8 rows available because the Stephen one value got repeated. I mean Stephen 1 2 is available because the C value there is no duplication, it's a unique values. So grouping will happen only row based. Okay, again if I change to old value, you can see that it got disappeared and the 3 values, I mean the sum is available as a 3. Okay, so this is how you need to add the grouping for the two columns. Okay, and you may have another question, something like how do I group the values with the different type of data types? Okay, here I added varchar and here I added numbers, and if I want to group the group the column based on date string, how do I do that? Okay, for that you need to do the just having that same example with the date operation. Here the fourth column is a due date, so that is a text. Please note that is a text, it's not a date type, it's contain the date type, it contain the date value, but it is the type of the cell is text. Okay, just grouping the column D. Okay, and if I hit enter, you can see that 7 values here because that D, the both columns are having the same values, right? So the grouping will happen in this formula, the grouping will happen based on this D as well as B. Okay, here the 4 values are same, D and B both are same, so that 211 got calculated and added to here. Okay, so for example, if I change the value to 24, even if you change any values, you can see the difference here, it got added. Just change the revert to 1. In group by function, you should know one more logic, something like if you are grouping the data, after grouping the data, the result will be aligned ascending order. So in this way, if you check that, the result items will be ascending order. Here the grouping will happen based on D and B. So D is a date column, so here the ascending will happen based on the date text. But if you consider that selected ranges, the starting value of this date is a 2000, but originally it is returning that Keshav. Again, the case of we are having that date as a 2021, but it's not a original value. So the reason is the due date contain the date, the type of this due date is text, so that is why that ordering is not happening. So this system is considering this D as a text format and assigning that text based result. But if you define then the column as a date, then ascending will happen automatically as expected. For example, if we change the group by D to E, I have added the due date in the date format in the E column. Okay, if I hit enter, you can see that the result as the first result I can see as a Ravi. So what do you mean Ravi here? If you check that, after grouping done, it is considering that order of the E column. 2000 is the very lowest year in the selected ranges. Okay, so it is considering that first row as a 2000 and it is checking that Ravi. Here you can see it here. So it is grouping the values and ordering the values based on that due date, then B column. So this is how you need to handle the group by option in a date based types and number based type or in a text based columns. Okay, hope you enjoyed my video and watch the next video of this query tutorial, which will be more interesting to boost your Excel knowledge. Okay, see you there.